Hello dear Bach Flowers friends, my name is Dietmar Krämer. I am an author and seminar leader and I'm lecturing on the topic of new Bach Flowers therapy. Before I want to talk about my work and my seminars, first a few little things about Edward Bach. Unfortunately, Dr. Bach only lived 15 months from the moment he discovered the last flower. He only treated acute cases and the longest lasted 6 weeks. Let me give you an example. A person comes to Edward Bach with acute headaches. Bach asks him how he is doing and the patient tells him that he is terribly angry. Bach prescribes the flower holly for the anger as the cause of the acute headache and the headache passes in a relatively short time. In acute cases, the current state of mind is precisely the mental cause of the complained physical complaints. Unfortunately, this is not the case in chronic cases. I have to work with the patient in conversation and over a long period of time to find out what the cause was. If the first physical complaints began 5 years ago, then it may be that the psychological cause was 10 years ago. Where the patient was betrayed. Bach flower willow, he swallowed the bitterness and after 5 years the first complaints began. In the meantime, the person has forgiven and has completely forgotten the bitterness of that time or even the situation when he comes to the practice. We now have to work more slowly in the conversation, or in many cases it is unclear. We treat using the tracks from top to bottom and at some point in the course of therapy we get to the topic. What sometimes looks like the mood symptoms improve from mixture to mixture, but the physical complaints do not change. At some point, new symptoms come up or a zone reacts. In this case, for example, the willow zone. The patient suddenly gets pain in his back. It's the bitterness zone, willow. The topic was not at all in the initial meeting. We ask the patient and he says, yes, something happened back then. We prescribe a cream with the willow bark flower for this zone and within 4 to 6 weeks, 50% of physical complaints are gone. When the therapy is so advanced, it goes so quickly. The rest takes time. But there is a real boost. This is the procedure in chronic cases. That means we need the tracks for this, but also a little more. This is one part of the new Bach Flowers therapies. But there is a second one. These are the Bach flower skin zones. There are 243 zones all over the body. Mental reflex zones, which are assigned to the Bach flowers, are where we can read directly from them what the mental cause of the complaints is. That works in most cases, let's say 85–90%. You have complaints, make a cream, and they go away. But now there are two modalities. One is that the zone does not fit with current or acute physical complaints. We have stomach pains and we don't feel guilty. Something stands out, something is wrong. It is true that in about 10 to 15% of cases the skin zone is not disturbed but the acupuncture meridian is. This can also be treated with Bach flowers. There are 3 flowers for each meridian. We have to determine which of the 3 flowers fits and then we treat a so-called silent zone. That is, a zone that has no symptoms of its own but complaints in the course of the meridian are triggered by such silent zones. We have our own diagnostics for this. This is the so-called aura diagnosis or aura test. That is, we can feel with our hands on the skin zones whether they are disturbed or not. And if someone then has complaints in a certain place, then we go over it with our hand, feel it in and can say, is it the zone? It is not. If it's not the zone, then it's the meridian. That's why the aura test is so important for our work because we can use it to differentiate zone or meridian. A few more things. For example, if we can't distinguish between 2 flowers, if what the patient is saying, if it fits 2 different flowers, we can't tell them apart from the conversation. With our hand, we test the zone. We can tell exactly what it is. This is the basis of the new therapies. The work on the tracks, the work in chronic cases, this is the topic of the program NT1, Module 1, and the matter of acupuncture meridians, the combination of Bach flower tracks with acupuncture meridians, which opens up completely new methods for us, is the NT2 module. Both are part of the Bach Flower education. What is new are the advanced courses now, which I teach myself, and there are other aspects that are very helpful to us. The first is Workshop 1, the Bach Flower Workshop to practice and deepen. Aura testing is taught there, which used to be in the face-to-face course, but since online courses are currently taking place, it is not possible to teach aura testing. That means, in principle, this first workshop, practicing and deepening a new Bach Flowers therapies, is actually the most important introduction for me, because that's exactly where we learn the aura testing that we need again and again. The second is type remedy testing, which is also a relatively important test that will be taught in this workshop. The main focus is on case studies. This means that we go through cases as we experience them in practice. I dictate a case, you take notes, and you do your own evaluation. We go through appointment by appointment what has changed, how we have to change the therapy, and how we have to adjust the mix. This is the most important workshop we have in it, because it's about deepening what comes in modules 1 and 2 for further study. The exciting thing about it is when flowers are confused, when people give wrong answers. This is very valuable because then we have the opportunity to precisely differentiate flowers where we would never have thought that they were very similar, that they could be confused. And sometimes the question arises, couldn't it have been the other flower after all? And what else would I have had to ask the patient as a therapist to clarify it? It's open, it's a very big dynamic behind it, because then we practically describe completely new ways and get to know the flowers in a much more differentiated way. This is the first workshop. It continues with the NT3, which is called Chakra Therapies. This is the continuation of NT2, the continuation of the meridians. This means that the chakras have a new function that has not yet been known at all, which is actually the most important for our work, namely the chakras control the control cycle of acupuncture. This allows us to make a chakra diagnosis for Bach flowers. We can determine in the chakra which tract T is needed at the moment. We can use it to make objective Bach flower diagnoses. This will be further developed later. This is the main focus of NT3. New therapies are still being added. We get to know how to work with sounds. We are talking about adhesions in the chakras. These are therapy blockages. The Bach flowers do not work. They always have an effect on the soul. We always notice an improvement. But there are cases where the patient is psychologically better and better and better, but the physical complaints just don't go away. And there are blockages. One is adhesions in the chakras. We learn to figure out when such an adhesion is present and can dissolve it with the help of a sound reinforcement with certain sounds. We learn to sing overtone, the equivalent of Bach flower tracks, and we learn a very important method, stone and metal. This means that if someone has physical complaints, then we put a stone on a disturbed zone and the metal on the corresponding chakra or exit point. In many cases, this makes it possible to get rid of symptoms in 1 to 3 minutes in acute symptoms that do not last longer than 3 days. This is actually the most important therapy for us for acute physical complaints. Building on this module, the next weekend will come. However, this begins with something different, with the workshop practice, deepening the new therapy with essential oils and gemstones. There are supplements to the Bach flowers. We experience synchronous cases where patients take a flower for a very, very long time and nothing happens. If we insert the corresponding stone, suddenly the therapy works. We also have a different experience. We give the right flower and have a chance to do a test on the skin zone to see if it fits. And the condition gets worse by taking the flower. Then the patient needs the oil. In this workshop, we learn to test on the skin zone whether the patient needs stones or oils in addition to the Bach flowers. That's why it's a very important workshop for us. In acute cases, it doesn't matter whether I use Bach flowers, stones, or oils. In chronic cases, it is a must, because therapy does not work if the right level of therapy is not addressed. The effort to determine this assignment was gigantic for me. But there is something completely new. Helga Wang, a professor at the University of Taipei, has succeeded in providing the first scientific proof of the effectiveness of the Bach flower skin zone at the university in Taiwan. She has tested over the skin zone and has been able to prove that they have an effect on Bach flowers. She had a device from Austria that could be used to test the body's own energy, and she treated certain skin zones with a Bach flower cream and the energy increased significantly. This is the first scientific proof without the placebo effect, without statistics about sensitivities, but objectively about body energy via a measuring device. That's sensational, but something new has come out. She then added the essential oils to these Bach flower creams. I have to say that she had to use several creams for this. You can't mix oils like Bach flowers. This is part of the seminar. The effect was that she was able to prove that if the essential oil is included in the cream in acute cases, the effectiveness increases by 30%. These are new results that are also new to me and that I have integrated into my courses. This is the workshop on Saturday, Stone and Oils. What is new is the chakra workshop. Completely new topics are added compared to the past, and the deeper background of the Bach flowers is added. The Bach flowers go much deeper. We talk about the spiritual background of the Bach flowers. The focus, however, is on practicing and deepening. This means that we will deepen the chakra diagnosis from NT3 and we will learn that we can test the acute type remedy via the disturbed chakra. That simplifies everything. The patient stands in front of us, we go through the symptoms, but we have an objective diagnostic option. This makes it possible to treat children and animals. That will be much, much easier. We need, if no one can't give an answer, like an animal, we just need to test. We have it. In addition, there are new therapies where we radiate meridians with colors and flood meridians with sounds. Colors will come later. Just as there are assignments to Bach flowers, stones and oils, there are assignments to colors and sounds for the meridians and thus the Bach flower tracks. And if patients have complaints, in the course of the meridian, the index finger hurts and radiates up to the elbow, then I can flood the meridian with sounds. 2 minutes per side, that's enough. We can also use it to treat acute physical complaints. They are gone in a few minutes. This is a completely new therapy that has developed from the seminar program New Bach Flower Therapies. That's actually the basic program. Now the last workshop, Workshop 5, is about completely new things. Namely, we also have the possibility to radiate with colors. The Bach flower tracks correspond to meridians, but also sound and colors. We can radiate meridians with colors. This is a new therapy. We actually have another therapy. We will practice radiating the acupuncture points with colors. We have the resonant colors of the meridians, that is, the color that corresponds exactly to the meridian. Not stimulated, as in the usual color therapy, where we set a stimulus, but we give, just like with the Bach flowers, where Bach says, we give the vibration that is missing. We give the color that is missing in the meridian. This is much more effective. And if there is pain in the course of the meridian, we can also use colors as an alternative to the sounds. Another method is to treat the back shu points, which are related to the organ. We can thus support the organ even more. This is the last workshop where we learn new therapies. This completes the training. We have a final workshop on Sunday, which is called Deepening the Exercise of Sensitive Diagnosis and Therapies, which is intended for people who have gone through the entire course program and want an update after years, who simply test all the exercises, check all the exercises again and again, and see if they can do it. There is a repeater discount if someone wants to do the courses again but already have the theory. It's up to you. I would be happy if you repeat the course. But if it's just about the practical exercises, we have this workshop where we test aura, type remedy test, chakra diagnosis, tests with stone and oils, colors and sounds, and many other therapies, also stone and metal pain therapy, where we practice everything again. This is a pure practice day to be fit for practice again. This is part of the preliminary therapy, but this workshop is also intended for anyone who has been in the practice for a longer period of time and notices that I would like to have some help again as to whether the testing is correct. So, that was my program. What you say next year or in the course of this year? I say next year because I made this video before Christmas, what to expect. And the program is continuing. If you can't do it now, you might be able to do the seminars the following year. The program runs all over again every year and will continue as long as I am still able to hold seminars. I would be happy to meet one or the other of you to welcome you to a seminar.